detailed info on the incredible amount of rules and regulations that the federal government has, but I thought there's no time better than the present to start getting a little bit of information about future funding that we need in order to maintain our financial plan, need to access, and that is for the proposed rail project in Pinellas County. The financing plan includes or assumes that we will receive half of the capital cost of building of the rail system from federal and state sources. As the Greg Robinson folks stated, the state funding for transportation looks like it's actually maybe on the rise. Not sure exactly what mode, but we've heard from the transit people that they're not being cut and that there is funding. But the federal funding is being cut. So I have a very just quick few slides to show you, and you can kind of just take it and we can talk about it, and you can store it in the back of your mind. Again, so the project cost, the capital project cost in constant dollars that was in our alternative analysis for the rail component is $1.5 to $1.7 billion. And as I just said, it is assumed that 50% of that cost will be funded locally, the other 50 between state and federal sources. That's a very conservative assumption, as I mentioned, because every project, including across the country of this type, has been funded 50% by the feds alone, not counting the state. And the state of Florida has a matching program that it's using to match in the two projects that are in Florida, Sunrail and down in Fort Lauderdale, there's a streetcar project. The state's putting up 25% of the cost, the feds are putting up 50% of the costs, and the locals are putting up 25%. So by us saying that 50% is going to be funded by the locals, that's a more conservative estimate. But anyway, so a fifth potential federal New Start, the name New Start refers to the pot of money that the Federal Transit and Federal Department of Transportation allocates. It is $771 million to $857. I just took half the total. Unfortunately, the New Start pot of money, even though it is rated by some rating agency as one of the most popular programs in all of U.S. Congress, by the Congress, was cut by the sequester by 5%. And even though it actually saw a big increase in MAP 21 in the authorization bill compared to other types of transit funding, like for buses that got cut, New Starts went up, but then it just got whacked by the sequester. Now, when we were in Washington earlier this week, of course, no congressional person will say that they did that, because they didn't do it, right? The sequester was across the board. The Congress folks say they didn't do any of it. They blame the president, and the president blames them. Nobody did it. It just happened. A 5% cut, the total amount in 2012 went from $1.95 billion in the 1 year to $1.87. So that's just sort of a note that the pot of money that we would be seeking is getting tighter. The way the federal government funds these projects is not all at one shot. So even though we would ask for somewhere around $800 million, and you would say, gosh, that's almost half the total amount, they allocate this over a period of years in like $100 to $200 million increments until they hit their mark. There's something, this is probably the only thing you have to remember from today. There's something that every transit New Start person and city knows. This is called the pipeline. That you as a city have to get in the pipeline and be approved to be in the pipeline. Right now, PSTA is not even in the pipeline. We're out on the tundra there, somewhere. But you have to get in the pipeline, and then you go through all of these hoops, federal hoops and approvals and evaluations until you reach the end. Yeah. It's amazing that this pipeline is so well known and exists for transit projects only. Highways do not have a pipeline. Highways just get money and get built. They don't have a pipeline. They don't get reviewed for their effectiveness or evaluation, but transit does. Transit is the only program that has this whole thing.
Brad, the pipeline kind of suggests that there's like the orders as you get in line, they evaluate the plans. Is that what that means?
Yes.
Or is, so that's like the process, there's like a time trigger of like when we get in?
Yes. There are time triggers that we have to complete certain steps in order to be approved to go into the pipeline. Now, the federal government is, all about reducing red tape, so they've reduced, they say, they have reduced the pipeline length of it. They have not necessarily made it any easier to even get in the pipeline, though.
So would that be suggesting that the sooner the better?
Yeah, I would say yes. This is a map of the United States and a listing, and it kind of shows the pipeline, or the different categories of pipeline. The first step in the pipeline is called project development. That's the federal lingo for they approve you to go into project development, which basically means design of your project. And so the orange squares, which you can see there's a lot over in California, West Coast, Jacksonville has just been approved. This is the President's 2013 new and small starts recommendations. So Jacksonville has been approved to enter project development. Charlotte, North Carolina has been approved to enter preliminary engineering. Once you get approval to go into preliminary engineering, you're pretty much there. Final design is the purple, and then the ultimate, the end of the pipeline is when you get a full funding grant agreement. The FFGA, if you can get a full funding grant agreement from the federal government, that's a contract that you sign with the federal government, says that we promise to give you $800 million, Pinellas County. We don't promise you when you're going to get it, but we promise under the full faith and credit of the United States of America that you'll get it someday. And it's up to Congress to allocate the money every year. And sometimes they even zero cities out that have full funding grant agreements in a year, but they have committed to that. And that allows cities or communities to build their project, because they can, the bonding market will take that agreement as strong credit toward funding your project. So the blue squares, Dallas, Houston, Denver, Salt Lake City, Minneapolis is building a light rail out over to St. Paul. The Washington, Dulles is building the Metro Rail to Dulles. And then New York, and then a Metro North one. And then Sunrail, this is Sunrail. That now has their full funding grant agreement. They're constructing it right now.
No appropriation for that, micro.
It is Congressman Michael's favorite project. And that's my last slide. Is the real summary is that while this is all the pipeline, it's all in the Federal Register, it needs to be authorized by Congress. Your project has to be authorized by Congress. So the most important thing is for us to get to know our congresspeople, or congressional delegation, or at least who is going to be in Congress from Pinellas in 2017, 18, 19. If you can predict that and become their best friend, that would really help us on this process. Okay. The next FTA step for our project is to enter project development. I know you can't see this, but Safety Lou was the old transportation authorization, and that Congress changed. Now we're under an authorization called MAP 21. They actually eliminated the step that we just finished, the alternative analysis. Now, you don't have to do an alternative analysis anymore. Well, thanks for telling us, you know? We just did it. So, but they didn't really eliminate any of the work that we did. That was all, that has now been all wrapped into this project development stage. So the alternative analysis, it was not wasted by any means. They're going to take all of it, and that has put us really far along toward moving down the pipeline. The next technical step, the next major technical step that the PSTA will have to do is environmental, the NEPA process, and that's a major.
So NEPA is part of the project development?
Well, I put the first bullet is sort of the official step in the pipeline according to FDA, project development. And what this says down in the box under project development, it says do your preliminary engineering and identify your corridor and look at different alternatives and pick one and do NEPA and do environmental. That's what that all says in there that you cannot read. They've kind of wrapped the looking at alternatives and the environmental all into one step now, which is probably a good thing, sort of functionally, because within, you probably heard at the different, or Bill, you probably heard at the different PAC meetings, they kept talking about how you had to do, under NEPA, you had to do alternatives, and you just did alternatives under the alternative analysis, and that confused people. So now it is all together, but since we've already picked our corridor, we will have to do a shorter NEPA stage. Now, to Darden, your point, FTA has just issued new guidance on this just a month ago that that it tries to limit the number of people, the number of cities that say they are in project development, because they say that you can only have, you're only allowed to be in project development for 2 years. 2 years. So you have to complete all of your alternative analysis, which we've done, and the environmental work in 2-year time frame, or else supposedly they're going to kick you out, kick your city out. Now, they've never kicked any city out because they've never done this, so who knows what Congress might do. If they like your project, they might give you an extension. We don't know. But so it's a good thing for us not to have officially said we're in project development, because the 2-year clock is not going yet. What I have been recommending, what I have been planning, and what I would recommend is that we don't enter project development until at the earliest, sometime in mid-2014. There probably will be other activities that we can do, as we're doing now with the land use piece and the bus plan and everything that we're already doing, that will certainly take our time and help us in the process. But we wouldn't actually launch an official NEPA process until at least a year from now, so that 2-year clock would not start for until 14. That's why I said the timeline for this next step, 2014 to 2016. So what we can do now, clearly communicate with our congressional delegation, and I think we did a good job of that just earlier this week. They know, at least the staffs that are there now know, whether or not they're going to be in office then is a big question. But and as I mentioned at our committees, and we talked about developing some more financial tools on the financing side of this, to exactly lay out the financing of the federal grants and the state grants, all on a 25-year timeline. That will help us just get us more ready for the FTA to review our project. There's a whole separate issue that I haven't really addressed in my PowerPoint, where you get reviewed you get audited or reviewed by the FTA, and your project gets reviewed. And you have to receive at least a medium rating. They rate you, they rate your project, not you, although I feel like, but they rate your project high, medium, or low, and you can get like a B plus, you can get a high, you can get a medium high, or a medium low, and that's still okay. You can get a medium low. But if you get a low, then FTA says your project is not recommended for funding. And Congress has the power to ignore FTA, but they haven't yet. But one might say that Congress has manipulated it to get their favorite project to get at least a medium low rating. But no project has been funded that got a low rating. So there are criteria that they evaluate, and those have just changed. Those have changed for the better for our project. The number one criteria is the land use and the land use plans that are accompany your investment. If your community has done nothing to promote transit-oriented development or urban dense land use around your proposed investment, you will get a low rating. It's a certainty you'll get a low rating. Your community has to accept this kind of investment and be willing to make the land use zoning changes around the proposed investment that make it worthwhile. And that really is the main criteria.
That stands to reason, because you don't have the infrastructure, you ain't gonna build up. So they got the,
Yeah.
the communities, surrounding communities to buy into rezoning and committing that infrastructure so that you can put the thing in, which is
Right.
land consolidation, zoning changes and stuff like that.
And that's exactly what we're trying to get started with the MPO, and we're working, and we're, Chair Danner is right now down in St. Pete, talking about how these stations could be constructed and then the land use around them be used to support this kind of investment. Any other comments or concerns or thoughts?
I think that yesterday would be the best time to get started this, but we'll at least be in the queue. Because just like the United grants, if they look at projects and the feasibility of funding the same way, you just got to get in and waiting,
The projects that are being funded now, that are in blue,
Let me ask you a question. How long was Sunrail? Well, I guess Sunrail went before they came out with this. It was already in development before they came out with this.
well, this is just now they're getting their money.
Right, but I'm saying you're talking about a 2-year time frame, that you have to have something to get funded or whatever to be kicked out. I'm saying, how long was Sunrail in the works before they actually got fully funded? Was that running in parallel with the Tampa Orlando line?
Yeah.
They
Well,
were doing all that at the same time.
they entered project development. I mean, I can find out exactly, but I think about 5 years ago.
Okay, that's what I was saying, because I know they got the funding for it.
What? 2007.
We
6
got the
years.
funding for the Tampa and St. Pete line, and then, of course, our government sent that money back. But I was just wondering about the other one. Was that going in parallel to the same thing we were doing?
Yeah.
And I guess the answer is yes, so.
They did a NEPA environmental document and all that. They went through this whole process on that, on the
Now,
Sunrail.
I brought up Micah because I made mention to this when we were down in Miami. That Micah kind of played a lot of the world, you know, you got politics going on, you got tennis on the class, you know, you guys you have to, when you get started, then we'll come help. I'm like, you already got the money. Like the governor said that. So,
Yeah.
I guess, my only other concern would be that, it would be actually, what about the government of the state? Because you talk about this funding, but isn't it at the behest of the one that's in the order of leadership that's in charge at that time?
Well, obviously, yes, but as an example, Sunrail and the Fort Lauderdale Wave are being funded by the state 25% of the whole cost of those two projects, which is some $200 and some million combined, or maybe even more, under this administration.
The pass-through funding, was it going directly to the county for the project?
It is Florida Department of Transportation, FDOT money, that is going to the entities that are implementing those projects. Now, Sunrail is being implemented actually by the state, by the state of Florida. The FDOT is actually building it.
I just, what I'm saying is, I mean, hopefully that leadership won't be here when this comes to pass, but I ever give a problem that, I'm wondering what was that 2.3 billion, was it sitting in that same pot within FDOT funding before the government sent it back? To refuse it? Where was that money sitting? So
That was federal high-speed rail money that the feds were going to
It
offer.
was incentive money, wasn't it? Or the,
No, well,
ARA, the recovery money?
yeah.
Yeah.
But I wasn't getting at the type of money was, I'm saying, where was it? And then, because if you remember when the governor was talking about refusing it, they were talking about can the different counties, band together and accept that money. And that didn't
There
work.
was
So
an
what I'm-
effort to try to do
Right,
that.
see what I'm getting at, it, I guess what I'm going is, all this will be great, but if it's not something that the governor wants done, then it's all for naught. Because like you say, the Sunrail is a state project. Well, high-speed rail was, the funding came to the state, so.
I had the same thoughts too, and I'm not sure how I feel about it through the NEPA process, that they would bring in some critical state agencies to sign off on permits, but the governor has appointed very pro-business, anti-regulatory people in charge of those agencies, where road or rail projects would be easier to get through an EA or EIS statement. But I wonder too, if politics entered the equation, that if the governor said, slow it down, then suddenly these regulatory agencies would find it in their heart to slow it down.
See, I said I'm saying,
Right,
they're
you're right.
planning now, and they're not even planning the RPCs. I mean, he's not funding them now, not even providing funding for them, because he figured they're getting away with business and slowing it down.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, the biggest problem, I guess that I see is that, depending on, like I said, the leadership and whatever type of funding is done, and whichever way that leadership wants to go, it's going to have a major impact on doing whatever you want to do. I mean, even though it was federal money, I mean, it was thousands of jobs. That's here now, even from our lobbyists, people talking about jobs and economic impact. We have all that. So I'm just curious as to if we do, like they got the funding for Sunrail, but at the behest of
But
whoever.
if you look at that map of the United States and you look at the blue dots and think to yourself, who is the governor in those states where a lot of the blue dots? There's governors that are approving and wanting this kind of infrastructure money coming to their state and their cities from both parties. And Governor Scott has agreed to Sunrail. And that it would be, and I think Chairman Micah had a lot to do with that. He said he did. He lobbied Governor Scott directly himself, but it's obviously, the folks in Orlando are very, very happy to have that project. But your concerns are certainly valid.
Commissioner
I just feel like if you don't get started and you don't do it, you never have it. And as Brad pointed out, part of the study that was already done is part of the process that would have had to be done in the future.
Yeah.
So Weatherford is on his way out. By the time this process goes through, I think that there will be a change, but there always is a change. For the last 50 years, I've watched a change. So you have to get started before you can go anywhere.
I concur.
You can't get on the train until you buy the ticket.
And I can tell you out west, we had National League of Cities meeting out there. They got 38 mayors, I guess the governors that were all in cahoots in there with the DC. They're happy, they know the benefits of the TMDs come to their communities. Jeff and I even rode the rail all the way through to each community. They were all excited about it. But how do you get 38 mayors to come together on the same page. I mean, it was phenomenal.
You have to start somewhere.
That's what I'm saying, but that kind of organization like we saw down in Miami
Yeah.
is what makes the difference. And, you know, I'm just real kind of concerned about that because we need it. We definitely need it. Like I said, yesterday was the best time to start this, but I mean, I hate to go, and like our chair talked about the different organizations. Why was that all of those people that are funding signings and press releases and all that? And that's the first time I saw that. They had all the environmental people there. They had all the different agencies backing that. They were there. I mean, they were there. They were all in agreement with this, and they went poof. Normally you have people on different sides. They all were there. They all were going in the same direction, and that's what you need. And then that went poof. And now